Si je sais, j'habite au Canada. Hai, 어르신 보여서 요셉 원이시고 servo. 그나노jem 요셉 Si je sais, j'habite au Canada.
Okay. Kind of tricky to share your vulnerability on camera. But today, I hardly do this because out of I don't know, sometimes I don't feel like it. Because sometimes I don't when I say feel like it, I mean I'm not inspired. But at the same time, I want to talk about it. And I have to address the fact that it's first of all, that it is ego triggering. Because I grew up bilingual. And I've always felt this insecurity. Not that much, but it is tied to, a lot of it is tied to possibly shame. I'm not really sure yet. I haven't meditated on it yet. But the whole, I wouldn't say lack of communication, but kind of. Yeah, it's a feeling of I don't know what to say sometimes, and it's trying to figure out the right words to say so that I don't get judged for it. And a lot of people do that, I find. This is why they pause a lot. For me, because I grew up bilingual, there is this theory that, they're kind of on par with each other. At least if it's two languages, they're on par with each other. But if it's, so meaning we're talking about actually being raised in two or more languages. For me, it is that, but that's the thing about the subconscious. It picks things up. It picks up things that it could be buried. It could be all that. It's tied a lot to the ego. Everything that's automatic, right? So, and for those who don't know that, that's pretty much what it is. I don't know. I don't do the research that much with it because, to be honest with you, I don't want to. Because I feel it's too much, it's too jargony. Blah, 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 theory, blah, 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 theory, blah, 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 theory. And it's everyone's competing with each other. There's no, it's okay. Because that's the thing about the past, right? That's the thing about, we can blame the whole thing to collective and all that stuff, but the fact is that, at least astrologically speaking, in the age of Pisces, if you look at the age of Pisces, if you look at this, literally the feeling of Pisces, those who are Pisces, they know this energy. It's quite passive, it's passive, and it's something to do with pacifism or something like that. But the point is that energy of you tell me what to do, I'll go with the flow. I don't know. And it's all about the feeling. All about the feeling. It's a mutable sign, right? So it's a mutable energy. So the word I picked up from Judy Hall's book, it vacillates. It's right? So with that being the case, because it's also a mutable energy, collectively speaking, that's kind of part of what we were also conditioned at the very least, it add to our conditioning for the past 2,000 something years. That when it comes to something like communication, we just kind of went along with the flow of things. And that's not, this isn't about good or bad, this is just about, for me, I feel like it's about being spoon-fed, right? And everything was much about escapism. We escape to, a lot of it's focused on, a lot of the Age of Pisces was like, it was not addressing the truth, right? It wants to hide, it wants to always reflect on this. It was like isolation and at the same time extremes like idealism, right? Neptune, but at the same time very much like has its own, because of idealism tied with Jupiter, it's tied in with that whole thing, right? Now, how does this tie into what I wanted to talk about? Well, first of all, like I said earlier, I grew up not having these, like, I feel like for a lot of monolingual speakers, specifically like in English, depending on how they grew up and what they grew up with, especially if they read a lot of books or whatever it is, lots of exposure. I think it's more about the exposure to the kind of communication, but at the same time, it's also a personal thing. We're talking about this concept of fluency. And from my observation alone, I noticed that it depends on your upbringing and also your personally. Like I have a friend who's from England, and when they speak, people might think they're not fluent. I think we need to get away from that idea that it's like fluent is all about one content, meaning, oh, I know 10,000 fucking words. I'm fluent. I'm C2. No, because that's not, I mean, if we're just focusing on the whole fluency thing, like the definition of the word fluency, okay? What does it say? Many, many, many definitions, but you'll come across the whole, like, not being, it's something to do with being automatic. But people don't believe that. A lot of people still don't. They just still think fluency is like, I know 10 million words. I graduated from university. I have a PhD. I did research on this. It's all ego. It's almost like, and it's not, this is not a bad thing. I'm not saying again, this is not about good or bad. This is just about the fact that it's like, and then what? Where are we moving from what? That thing where it's like, you know what I'm saying? So the ego has a role. The ego actually has a role. One of the main things I noticed or realized about the ego is its role is to actually wake you up because it makes you unconscious. And the more unconscious you are, the more, most likely, most people will start to get sick and tired of like, what's going on here? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. Da, da, da. So this, languages are no exception. But here's the thing as well. We think also of languages as if it's like, it's separate from society. It's like that whole puzzle piece, right? The universe. We think it's like, there's just spirituality. We're just going to go spirituality here. We're just going to go languages here. We're just going to go music here. We're going to take it apart and we're just going to go that way. Is that how everything works? It doesn't. But, I'm so used to this, and this is something that I have resentment about. And it is a lot of times when I say things, people get quiet, or they don't agree with me, or they have something to say against it, which is like fine. But the whole resentment thing comes out of, for sure, I know that it's like, why don't you listen to what I say? Why don't you accept me? Poor me. So it's not something I will not expect. I've seen it time and time again, you know. So now going back to the whole thing with the, you know, growing up, I feel like I need to, I've always needed to, like, one, prove something. Number two, get validated for my efforts. But it doesn't work that way, right? So what I do now, at least with languages, is just I do what I know, I work with what I know, but at the same time, it hasn't been a focus of mine, because I find that it's all the same shit everywhere. Most of it is. About 95% of it is the same shit. Regurgitate, memorize, grammar, textbook, vocab, conjugations, lexicon, memorize. It's the same shit all the time. And I always get this, I just got this like message from a friend of mine saying that this person says, oh, it's still going to be the thing. Memorization and repetition is still the same thing. But I think, obviously that's their experience and that's their opinion. And we can only speak from our conscious where we are at any given time. I feel like with with the fact that how everything is connected, personally, I don't want to be stuck in one little, right? Like that whole puzzle piece. Oh, it's just this music thing, and that's it. That's how I'm going to see the world, through the lens of music. It's good because it's like that's part of who you are, and it's part of your expression, right? It's like there's no such thing as separate, and there's no such thing as whole, really. But that's what this whole thing is. We don't understand it from this mind perspective here, because we don't, because we're stuck in this. We're here. The key is always awareness. Key is always being in it. So this now ties back into what I feel is strongly about, and why acquisition, at the very least, acquisition, not exactly as the theory or whatever it is, called by Stephen Krashen, doesn't matter. The point is that there's something about that, or really just being natural. People will say, what's natural? I've been asked that question. What's natural? So we're so completely out of touch with our own natural selves. We're out of touch. Right? So I don't know how to work that yet, but for me, what I've done is, being, if you've seen some of my videos, you've seen some of my charts, like my birth chart, I had Pluto conjunct Sun. At the very least, that thing, or Pluto also trine Moon, whatever. And, excuse me, not excuse me, because it's a natural thing. I don't want to say that. It's always this ego death. And I've learned that that's what it was. And this is why I was like, what are all those painful experiences that I've had? People might call it the dark night of the soul. I don't know, whatever it is. The point is I've gone through it a lot of times, and I still go through it. And that's why when I make now these videos, it's more about being honest with myself. This is the thing I've been going through recently. It's like authenticity. And just being real with where I am right now. So that ties in, I find, with this idea that we have this linear perspective, that when it comes to specifically like languages, it's almost like, when we talk about fluency, it's almost like we have this thing. It's like, if I, for example, spoke some language, first of all, before that, I would say that, it's like, well, how do you know? What's your experience? It's like, ich habe keine viele Erfahrungen damit. Wenn ich auf Deutsch rede, oder wenn ich auf Deutsch mit allen Personen rede, allen Menschen rede oder spreche, kann ich nicht so viel sagen. Kann ich mich nicht so viel, so gut erklären, aber ich habe ein bisschen Fließenheit. So did you notice that for those who speak German, you probably noticed that if you switch between the two, I switch between English and German, there's a switch of intonation there. There's a switch of body language as well, although the personality still comes through. So what does that mean? What does this have to do with that? Well, first of all, yes, that was an example, but my intention was not to prove to anyone, because I feel like we're always looking for proof. Look up for proof. Look up for proof. Why don't we look for both proof, emotion, connection, belief, understanding, empathy, research, knowledge, experience? Why don't we look at everything? Instead of fucking like myopically going, it's this way, one way or another. So this is what I'm saying. Like when it comes to fluency, there really isn't a thing for it. But we do know internally that fluency has a lot to do with, at least this is the term that's been used, and it makes sense because it's not about the term, it's not about the research, it's the fact that the word represents exactly that thing. Automaticity. When I speak in my, well, I try to, when I communicate with my parents, for example, they speak, they're Filipino. So when we communicate, or at least when I understand them, I understand their intentions, I understand their body language, I understand it's much deeper than what we think it is. And this ties into the whole, why I've said many times, even to past students before on different platforms, so I teach languages, or I teach English, that it's mostly about being childlike. But what is childlike? Immature? No, you know what that means. I think we need to get out of that whole conscious only, I'll repeat, conscious only mindset. You know, it's like, I gotta just know this. See, that's a linear thing, right? We were focused on like A to Z, beginning, end. That's a conditioning. And that's not a bad thing, because that teaches us that that's not true. Especially from experience. Those who are now waking up are starting to realize that it's like, okay, that belief is like fucking futile. Right? But it's not bad or good. It's just the fact that that's not going to work anymore. Same thing with this little thing called communication. Even when I talk about languages, I say it's more than communication. It's more than I used to say, like, oh, it's about intentions. I used to say something like there's collective culture, there's individual culture and collective culture. Behind it is intention. Behind it is but I think sometimes when we look at these things, when we look at people talk, it's almost like, so we take our notes, and all of a sudden we forget it's like the answer is actually within. So now I want to tie this to the whole thing that Sedna is coming through. Sedna is coming through Gemini. At least this will be by tomorrow or Saturday 27th. But it'll be a continuous thing, right? Sometimes we have to get reminded that it's like, no, it's not just a one-day thing. See, that's that thing. It's a linear perspective. It's that whole like, oh, so this is the point. Just like asking a question. It's like, when did you come out? 3:45 in the morning in April 2007. That's when I realized. Seriously? You see how it you see how that is. If you look at it, it's not about pockets of things. The reason we have all these pockets of things like terminologies, concepts, and grades, and even with A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2 sort of thing, or these things, it's to help us to make sense of the real, like this world. When I say real world, I mean this world. So this reality. But it's not all of it. I think we need to kind of see that it's like, okay, this is what it is. Bring forward then what works. What might still work, but kind of let go. Not necessarily throw away or discard or whatever. What doesn't work anymore, but rather what is beneficial for everyone. This is one of those little things. So even for me, when it comes to languages, I tell my students now, I tell them, I teach like traditional stuff and stuff because that's my job. I have to admit that it's a job, but it's not what I want to do. But I'm also being realistic and saying, okay, well, there's more. My wants are more important. Therefore, what I want, I don't know exactly what that might come in, but I want it definitely that I don't want the way they teach it, but what I want is takes precedence. It's priority. It's more important than just, okay, well, I don't want this job, so fuck it. No, I appreciate that I have a job. I'm grateful for the help that I get, the connection with the students. Of course, I don't agree with their methods and all those things, but that's their method. That's their thing, and I go with it because it's not that important compared to my intention, my goals later on. Whatever, even if it's not goals, I don't know what I aspire to want to do. I don't know. Right? So with Sedna coming in through Gemini, Sedna, if you know this, I don't know if you know this, and whether you know this or not, it doesn't matter. Sedna is about cycles. I think she comes around probably around over 2,000 years. So it kind of ties in with with the ages in astrology, right? I don't know exactly the number, but it does to me it makes sense. But she's about cycles, she's about letting go, she's about really allowing, she's about transitions, she's about transformations. I guess you can see regeneration as well. She's about using the energy that's left over. Blubber, whales and all this stuff is tied with her, right? If you look at the mythology, there's blubber is one of those things that's tied to her. Said the rules blubbers. Well, what is blubber? Isn't that fat? But what is fat? Isn't that stored energy? Oh. So stored energy, that means something's gotta be burned. Something's gotta, and then there's a new, it's either like something new or something that's going to be brought back. I was reading this book, I saw it on a video with Pam Gregory, or she had a guest speaker, guest, whatever, she had a guest, and she wrote this book called Sedna, Return of Sedna. And it was funny, I'm still reading the book, and it's like, oh, interesting. And you look at not just the mythology, but what is the understanding of Sedna today. And it's not just like letting go, it's not just a transformation and all those things, it's something to do with coming back to things that make more sense. Because Sedna is a higher vibration of Ceres, as Ceres is the high vibration of the moon. So it's like how to describe this? Kind of like an instinctual, energetic transformation of not just the soul, but our connection to higher soul, like our higher selves and soul, all that stuff. So Sedna is like that. Sedna is so far the farthest, the farthest planet that we've discovered, or rather, dwarf planet, whatever, asteroid. Right? So again, right there. I got caught up in the terminologies, but I'm not going to reject that because it's like, okay. So part of this whole thing is really like Sedna coming in through and bringing all this, we want to say new things, but not necessarily. New and old are polarities that the ego wants to define reality as. What is old and new? If you think about it, where do you get your new stuff from? A new book. Where does that come from? Right? Let's say I have this book right here. Where does this come from? I don't mean to be condescending, but that's how I That's a thing, okay? But where does this book come from? Paper. Okay, paper. Where does paper usually come from? Simple thing. Trees. How do you know that tree didn't recycle? How do you know that it didn't die? How did you know it didn't get recycled, reborn from waste before, and all that stuff? So new, we think of new, we have this egoic sort of reliance on the unhealthy ego that it's like, if it's new, it must be like, I'm just going to get rid of the old, therefore I like the new. It's a rejection of, it's resistance and rejection of history and past, or more than that. If you look deep within, you'll sense this sort of like, because I've always known this, when I know something, I know it. And people was like, well, you need evidence, blah, blah, blah. Sure, I'll look for it when I'm, because I do it. But in this case, what's more important? Right now, literally as I'm talking, is it like what I'm sharing with you? Or is it the fact that you have to be right or I have to be right? Is that what's more important? No, it's not. Right? So that's an unhealthy ego. A healthy ego would be like, okay, I addressed that. Okay, we're coming from different experiences, all those things. Okay. Right? And then we look at everything. We watch for projections. Like, okay, what is this that I'm resisting? But for me, I have a lot of, work to do. But that's not because I want to look at it as like, oh, I have work to do, so I must work on it, because otherwise before I die, I won't work on it, and I'll just start all over again. Or maybe it'll be the end of the world. Again, linear. Right? So, yeah. But yeah, so the point is that this is the whole thing. When it comes to languages, it's something that is, it's a journey, like everything else, right? I think most people we want to focus on it's tempting to go into the destination right away. As if it's like, bloop, end of the road, okay, and there's nothing beyond that. It's like a flat earther mindset. It's like, it's like, that's it. What's the purpose? You see what I mean? So it's tied, in a way, it's tied to what we see as purpose, okay? That's the thing. We have this conception that purpose is like, oh, once I get there, that's it. Once I get fluent, that must be it. Because I'm pretty sure there are probably people who'll be like, oh, he's not. Because I've been told that before when I tried to speak Swedish one time. And it's like, oh, you don't speak Swedish. Well, you don't speak English. So I wanted to say that because that was that was a projection thing. But, it's like, well, so there's that conceptualization of this professor I have that she believed that I can't speak Swedish even though I tried. The real goal there was for me was I was just having fun. I was just giving it a try. I don't believe in speaking languages right away, but that's not under my control. There is control, whatever. What I can control, what the reality is that, okay, what I want to do is continue to be exposed, right? So, it's a never-ending story. Copyright, oh, sorry, I used your line. But it's a never-ending story. It's a never-ending journey. It's never-ending, thing. So, at least for me, that's what I'm still recovering from, trying to get back, whatever it is, right? And just always being in the present moment as I do it. That's why there are those moments where I slow down or I don't say anything. Yeah. So, Sedna, Gemini. Have fun with that. See you guys later.